Did you know, before Israel became a nation, their leaders were labeled terrorists? Men who would one day sit in the Prime Minister's office were once hunted by the British Empire. They were branded as outlaws, plastered on dead or alive posters, and accused of bombings, assassinations, and sabotage. And yet, decades later, these same men would shape the politics, laws, and very borders of the modern state of Israel. This is the story of how freedom fighters became founding fathers, and how the line between terrorist and hero is written not in the moment, but in the pages of history. Before we dive in, just to let you know that we're seeing that 55% of our viewers who watch our channel regularly have not subscribed to us yet, so we're asking you a favor. Before we start our deep dive and you like us and also want to support us, there's a free and simple way to do that. Just hit that subscribe button so that you never miss out when we put out new videos, and we assure you that we will commit to bringing you the best videos each week. We also crave your feedback and suggestions as we aim to give the best. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire was gone, and Palestine came under British control through the League of Nations mandate. The 1917 Balfour Declaration had promised a national home for the Jewish people, but also pledged to protect the rights of the Arab population. Those promises collided almost immediately. Jewish immigration rose steadily in the 1920s, but after Hitler came to power in 1933, it surged dramatically. For Jews fleeing Europe, Palestine was a lifeline. For many Arabs already living there, it was the beginning of displacement. The British found themselves in the middle of a rapidly escalating conflict, and their attempts to appease both sides pleased no one. By the late 1930s, Britain restricted Jewish immigration just as the Holocaust was beginning, leaving many Jews trapped in Nazi-occupied Europe. For some Jews in Palestine, this was unforgivable, and it changed the fight from political lobbying to armed resistance. The Haganah, formed in 1920, was the first major Jewish paramilitary group in Palestine. Its original purpose was purely defensive, protecting Jewish settlements from attacks during periods of unrest. In the 1930s, the Haganah actually cooperated with the British against Arab uprisings. Many members even received British military training. But as the reality of the Holocaust became clear, and Britain continued to block Jewish immigration, the Haganah's stance hardened. By the mid-1940s, the Haganah joined more militant factions in what became known as the Jewish Resistance Movement, coordinating sabotage and raids against British infrastructure. The Irgun, also known as Etzel, split from the Haganah in 1931, believing that defensive strategies were not enough. They argued that only offensive action could force Britain to abandon the mandate and allow a Jewish state. When Menachem Begin became commander in 1943, the Irgun openly declared war on British rule. Targets included railways, police stations, and government offices. Begin claimed the Irgun tried to avoid civilian casualties, but some of their most famous attacks would challenge that narrative. On July 22, 1946, the Irgun carried out their most notorious operation. The King David Hotel in Jerusalem served as the British administrative headquarters. Irgun operatives, disguised as Arab workers, planted milk churns filled with explosives in the basement. They say they phoned in a warning. The British said it came too late. At 12:37 p.m., the blast ripped through the building. 91 people were killed, including British officials, Arabs, and Jews. The British called it a terrorist atrocity. The Irgun insisted it was a legitimate act of war against an occupying power. To this day, the King David Hotel bombing remains one of the most controversial moments in Israel's founding story. If the Irgun was militant, Lehi, also known as the Stern Gang, was radical to the extreme. Founded by Avraham Stern in 1940, Lehi saw Britain as the main enemy even during World War II, when most Jews were fighting alongside the Allies. Lehi was willing to seek help from anyone who opposed the British, including fascist Italy and even Nazi Germany. This ideological gamble remains one of the darkest stains on its legacy. Lehi was born out of a split within the Irgun in 1940. Its founder, Avraham Stern, rejected the Irgun's decision to halt anti-British attacks during World War II. For the Irgun leadership, fighting the British while they were at war with Nazi Germany was strategically foolish, and morally dubious, since the British were one of the few powers opposing Hitler. But for Stern, Britain was still the main obstacle to Jewish independence. In his mind, the Holocaust made it more urgent to fight British immigration restrictions, not less. He had one goal: drive the British out of Palestine at any cost, and establish a Jewish state from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River. Their most infamous act came in November 1944, the assassination of Lord Moyne, Britain's Minister of State for the Middle East, in Cairo. Two Lehi members rode bicycles up to Moyne's car and shot him at point-blank range. The killing horrified Winston Churchill and further alienated British opinion from the Zionist cause. From the British perspective, Lehi was the most dangerous Jewish underground group. Unlike the Haganah, or even the Irgun, Lehi had no interest in restraint, public opinion, or diplomatic cover. They carried out assassinations in broad daylight, ambushed soldiers, and planted bombs in crowded public spaces. Their code of conduct didn't exclude civilian casualties if it served the cause. That's one reason even many Jews in Palestine, including David Ben-Gurion, denounced them as reckless extremists who endangered the entire Zionist movement. Among Lehi's members was a young Yitzhak Shamir, who, like Menachem Begin, would one day become prime minister. The British responded with sweeping crackdowns, mass arrests, house-to-house searches, public hangings. Captured Irgun and Lehi members were executed at Acre Prison. In a bold act of revenge in 1947, the Irgun kidnapped two British sergeants and hanged them in retaliation for the execution of their men, the Sergeants' Affair. Photographs of the bodies, booby-trapped with explosives, shocked the British public and intensified calls to withdraw from Palestine. By 1947, Britain had had enough. The conflict was too costly, too unpopular at home, and too complicated to resolve. The matter was handed to the United Nations, which voted to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. The British left in 1948, Israel declared independence, the Haganah became the Israel Defense Forces, IDF. The Irgun was absorbed into it, though not without conflict as seen in the Altalena affair, a violent clash between Irgun fighters and the new Israeli government. Lehi was also dissolved. The transformation was remarkable. Men once on Britain's most wanted list were now shaking hands with world leaders. Menachem Begin, leader of the Irgun, became prime minister in 1977 and signed the Camp David Accords with Egypt, earning a Nobel Peace Prize. Yitzhak Shamir, a Lehi leader, served as prime minister twice, in the 1980s and early 1990s. Their personal histories, once used to condemn them, became part of Israel's founding mythology. History forces us to wrestle with the question, what makes someone a terrorist, and what makes them a freedom fighter? To the British of the 1940s, these men were criminals undermining the law. To the Jewish community facing British restrictions and Holocaust survival, they were heroes fighting for existence. The uncomfortable truth is that both can be true at the same time, and history often decides the label only after the dust has settled. So, before Israel became a nation, their leaders were labeled terrorists. They fought the world's largest empire using bombs, bullets, and deception, and lived to see the country they dreamed of rise from the desert. And perhaps their story is proof that in the struggle for freedom, yesterday's outlaw can be tomorrow's statesman. If you found this feature interesting, please like, share, and post your comments with us at Did You Know, where we dive into history, science, and little-known facts about our world. See you next time.